Hey there, Nicole from iPad Calligraphy. In this video today, we're going to let out one of my favorite quotes: inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. Before we get started, if you want to follow along with a traceable version in Procreate rather than trying to work it out yourself, there's a free worksheet in the description below. Or if you're one of the first 5 people to comment on this video, I'll send you out the exact one that I'm using. It just has a few extra pages as well as some directional arrows, and you'll also get my trusty calligraphy brush as well. Okay, so let's get started. So to explain how the worksheet I'm using works, these numbered red dots show you where each stroke starts, and you follow the arrows until they stop to complete the stroke. Then you would pick up your pencil and move to the next stroke. So we're going to start at stroke number 1, complete that, pick up your pencil, go to stroke number 2. It'll make sense as we go, just follow along with your traceable version. So I've got my ink set to black and my brush size is at 7%. This will match the thickness of the downstrokes. So remember that your downstrokes use a heavy pressure and upstrokes use a light pressure. Getting your strokes to taper nicely from thick to thin takes a bit of practice, but just keep an eye out and try to avoid any bulges in your strokes. So we have our brush set up, and I'm going to select the layer just above the example. It's called Right Here, and it's a blank layer on top so that we can reuse this guide over and over. So we'll start here at stroke number 1, a heavy pressure downstroke, and then we lighten up and finish at the baseline here. And you'll see with calligraphy, often letters look as if they're made with one stroke, but actually they're made up of 2 or more that often overlap and join seamlessly. So this I is a perfect example of this. Now we'll move to stroke number 3, starting with a light pressure, and then move into the heavy pressure as I curve around and follow until the arrows stop here. Stroke number 4, the S starts with a light pressure loop, and then we follow into a heavy pressure for the downstroke part, and then light again and follow it right up into the X height line. And then we've got stroke number 5, follow the P down and end with a small flourish that sits nicely here in this gap. So I've obviously planned this calligraphy out already, but a way that I like to plan my flourishes in a composition is I'll draw out the word, and for any flourishable type letters, I'll stop early so they don't have an ending. And then I have, once everything's in place, an idea of how the composition looks, and I can come back and fill in my flourish on another layer afterwards, so I can play around with that white space and try out a few things to see what works best. And I like to do the dots on letters pretty much straight away, because often I find I forget them and I finish the whole piece, even post it on Instagram, and then realize there's no dot on the I. So I like to do that straight away. The oval shape can be a tricky one to get the pressure right. Don't increase your pressure until you've taken that full curve, and make sure you lighten up before you get to the baseline. So actually it's a really short sort of amount of time that you've got the pressure there. And then we're up to 11, and the downstroke for the T using a heavy pressure, and then lighten up before you get to the baseline. So just try and keep those tapers between thick and thin really graceful and smooth. And then the O following through and around to finish there. Now you could do the order either way here. I've marked stroke number 14 to be the crossbar flourish for the T, but you could finish the N and then come back and do the crossbar of the T separately. You don't need to follow my exact stroke order for these kind of crossbar and flourished elements. The important thing is just that the red dots show you where each stroke starts. The order is less important for those other strokes. Okay, so we've got our first line, inspiration exists. We're going to move to the second line. Again, it's another letter that appears to be a single stroke, but it's actually made of 2 different strokes. So we start at the top at stroke number 1 and then come back to stroke number 2 for the bottom of the B. And like I said before, I didn't finish the B until the rest of the strokes are in place. So now I can see where to put the crossbar of the T so it fits nicely together. So we could continue along, but I want to make sure to show you a special Procreate feature that is really helpful here. The next step is to try without tracing. And if the thought of that makes you really nervous, don't worry, I'm going to show you something that will help. So this is something I haven't really seen people use in calligraphy before, only in illustration, and that's Procreate's reference window. And it's super helpful for calligraphy, and especially for refining your skills and just taking it to that next level. So to turn it on, you tap the wrench icon and then you go to the canvas menu and switch on the toggle for reference. So mine was already on, I had to turn it off and now back on again. So it automatically opens your canvas by default, and what we want to do is to open an image. So just go to image and tap on input image. Something to remember is you have to have the image on your local iPad saved in photos. And now I have this separate reference window that I can move anywhere on the screen and also zoom in and move it around independently of the canvas. So it's super helpful to easily see a reference of your calligraphy as you're writing and practice on your own without tracing. When you finish that first line, you can tap on snapping and magnetics, which will help you find the middle of the canvas so you can center it easily. You'll see that little orange line tells you that's the middle. And you can write the next line on a separate layer. Just tap the plus at the top to create a new layer. And this will enable you to move this next line around independently of that first one as well. Another amazing advantage of digital calligraphy, you can see here I've got too much space between the words it and has. We're just going to use the select tool, the one that looks like a little S, draw around the last part of this line and move it over so the spacing is better. If you want to learn more about handy tips like this, I've got a full workshop for learning iPad calligraphy from scratch. You'll find the link to that in the description below. So another thing to keep in mind as well is to just make sure that you're following the angle for your letter forms. So this style is based on copperplate calligraphy, which is written at 55-degree angle. These diagonal lines are there to help just keep that consistency. I'm sort of running into the edge of the page here, so I'm going to move things over and just tighten up the spacing here. There you have it. So I'll take a better look. I can close my reference window. Now I can tidy things up. I've got my snapping on and just center this in the middle. I hope you enjoyed this little project today, and I hope you give your reference window and writing on your own a go. It's just really going to push your skills that much further. And don't worry, digital calligraphy is super forgiving. You can always undo at the tap of 2 fingers. That's the point. Make another layer over the top and refine it. Great, so don't forget to leave a comment below if you want this exact worksheet, and I will see you next time.